Tonight, our story takes us into the vast, restless quiet of the Pacific, following the legendary lost aviator, Amelia Earhart. But first, come in from the cold. Listen to the faint, soft patter of the night rain against the window pane. The outside world cannot touch you here. You are safe inside this warm room, lit only by the last flickering candlelight. The worn chronicle of her journey is waiting for us. I've already retrieved the small, smooth logbook, bound in leather, the colour of a stormy, infinite ocean. Let us turn the fragile, final page together. Our journey begins. There is a specific kind of silence that exists only in the spaces between the blades of grass in a backyard at 2 a.m. It is a wet, heavy silence, sinking into the earth along with the dew that gathers on the hem of a cotton nightgown. Before the engines, before the roar of combustion and the blur of the raceway, there was only the stillness of the garden and the infinite theatre of the sky. Imagine the cold touch of the night air against the skin of a young girl. It is not an aggressive cold, but a crisp, awakening chill that makes the senses vibrate with clarity. She lies on her back, the damp earth seeping through the thin fabric, grounding her, while her eyes travel distances that the human mind can barely comprehend. The smell here is organic and ancient. It is the scent of soil breathing, of damp oak leaves decomposing slowly in the shadows, and the faint, sweet perfume of night-blooming jasmine drifting from the neighbour's trellis. Above her, the cosmos is not a flat canvas, but a deep, churning ocean of diamonds. She does not know yet that she craves speed, but she feels the rotation of the earth. If she lies perfectly still, holding her breath until her lungs burn just a little, she can feel the planet turning beneath her spine. It is a slow, majestic carousel, spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, carrying her through the dark. She traces the constellations with a finger raised to the void. Orion, Cassiopeia. They are static to the eye, yet she knows they are hurtling through the vacuum, driven by forces of gravity and light that are more powerful than any engine built by human hands. The telescope stands beside her like a silent sentry, its metal tripod legs distinct and cold to the touch. The brass eyepiece smells faintly of machine oil and old glass. When she presses her eye to it, the world narrows down to a single point of light. The silence of the house behind her is absolute. Her parents are asleep, the dog is asleep, the town is asleep. But she is awake with the universe. In this quiet observation, a seed is planted. It is not just a love for the stars, but a fascination with the mechanics of movement, how things go, how things fly, how the heavy iron core of a planet can float weightlessly in the velvet dark. She breathes in the night, tasting the metallic tang of the ozone, and feels the first stirring of a hunger that will define her life, the hunger to move, to go faster, to catch the light. Years later, that hunger finds a new vessel, far removed from the silent garden. The air here is different. It is thick with the scent of spun sugar, burnt popcorn, and the heavy industrial grease that lubricates the joints of a wooden beast. The summer heat radiates off the asphalt, creating shimmering mirages that dance above the ground. But she does not feel the heat. She only feels the vibration. She stands in line, the wooden planks of the platform trembling beneath her sneakers every time the train thunders past. This is the cathedral of gravity. The roller coaster rises like a skeletal mountain against the blue sky, a lattice of weathered white wood and steel bolts. The sound is a rhythmic mechanical percussion, the clack, clack, clack of the chain lift, the scream of steel wheels on steel tracks, the collective gasp of the riders. When she finally sits in the car, the safety bar locks down across her lap with a heavy final click. The material of the seat is hot vinyl, sticky against her legs. She grips the metal handle and her palms are slick. This is the moment of surrender. The train jerks forward, engaging with the lift chain. The ascent is agonizingly slow, a study in anticipation. She looks out, and the world begins to drop away. The tops of the trees, then the roofs of the ticket booths, then the distant horizon of the city. The air grows cooler as they climb, whistling gently through the structure. Reaching the crest is a suspension of time. For a heartbeat, everything stops. The chain releases its hold. The nose of the car tips forward, staring down into the abyss. In that split second before gravity takes hold, there is a sensation of weightlessness that is more intoxicating than wine. Then the fall. The stomach drops, leaving the body behind. The wind transforms from a breeze into a roaring wall, tearing at her hair, forcing tears from the corners of her eyes. The world becomes a blur of color and light. She does not scream. She laughs. It is a silent, internal laugh of absolute recognition. The forces pressing her into the seat, the G-force pulling at her skin, the violent change in direction that slams her shoulder against the side of the car. It is a language she understands perfectly. It is the language of momentum. In the chaos of the descent, amidst the rattling of the wood and the roar of the wind, she finds a center of calm. This is where she belongs, not in the stillness of the ground, but in the velocity of the fall. And now the timeline converges on a single quiet morning. The memory of the stars and the memory of the coaster fade into the background, leaving only the immediate tactile reality of the garage. It is early, the sun not yet fully risen, and the light filtering through the high windows is grey and diffuse, filled with dancing motes of dust. The garage is a sanctuary of sensory details. dominant scent is fuel, high-octane racing fuel, a sharp chemical aroma that stings the nose pleasantly and promises power. It hangs heavy in the air, mixing with the smell of cold rubber tires stacked in the corner and the underlying notes of metallic dust and cleaners. It is an aggressive scent, but to her it smells like home. It smells like possibility. She sits on a stool, her racing suit unzipped to the waist, the sleeves tied around her hips. The concrete floor is smooth and stained with the ghosts of past oil leaks. In her hands she holds a ceramic mug, the heat of it seeping into her palms, warring with the morning chill. The coffee is black, oily, and bitter. She takes a sip, and the hot liquid trails down her throat, waking her internal systems, sharpening the edges of her vision. She watches the steam rise from the cup, curling in delicate ribbons that vanish into the cool air. Everything is still. The car sits before her, raised slightly on jacks, its cowling removed to reveal the intricate, sleeping heart of the engine. The metal is dull in the low light, pipes and wires weaving together like arteries and veins. It is a dormant beast, waiting for the spark. She runs a hand over the smooth curve of the helmet sitting on the workbench beside her. The surface is polished, cool, and flawless. She listens to the ambient sounds of the waking track, the distant clang of a toolbox being opened, the scuff of a boot on pavement, the low murmur of the mechanics discussing tire pressure in reverent tones. This is the ritual, the quiet before the violence of the start. She takes another sip of coffee, savoring the bitterness. Her heart rate is slow, steady, a metronome ticking in the silence. She inhales deeply, filling her lungs with the fumes, the dust, the cold air. She remembers the stars spinning above the garden. She remembers the drop of the wooden coaster. And she knows that in a few minutes, when the key turns and the engine detonates into life, she will be back in that same flow, that same river of speed that has carried her since she was a child. But for now, just for this second, she rests in the quiet, holding the warmth of the cup, waiting for the world to begin. To understand the vessel, one must first forget the blueprints, ignore the engineering diagrams, and the cold, hard mathematics of lift and drag. Instead, close your eyes and imagine the hands of the artisans who shaped her. The Lockheed Electra 10E is not simply a machine built on an assembly line. It is a sculpture hammered from sheets of duralumin, a silver fish designed to swim through the currents of the air as naturally as a shark moves through the deep. Run your hand in your mind along the fuselage. The metal is cool to the touch, smooth as a river stone, yet it hums with a latent energy even when still. It is not a seamless shell. It is a patchwork of aluminum skin, held together by thousands of rivets. Each rivet is a tiny, distinct bump under your fingertips. Consider the patience required to place them. A worker in a factory in Burbank stood for hours, the air thick with metal dust and the smell of hot oil, driving these pins into place. Each one is a promise. Each one is a tiny anchor holding the structure together against the violent forces of the atmosphere. They form lines that stretch from the nose to the tail, like the paws of a living creature, or perhaps like the stars in a metallic constellation. The wings sit low on the body, broad and confident. They do not look fragile. They look like they were carved from a solid block of silver. Inside the cowling, the engines are not merely motors. They are the twin hearts of the beast, the Pratt and Whitney Wasp engines. Even their name suggests something alive, something with a sting. To the mechanic who wipes the grease from their cylinders with a rag, these engines are objects of worship. They smell of burnt castor oil and high-octane fuel, a heady, intoxicating perfume that clings to clothes and hair for days. The cylinders are arranged in a circle, a radial symmetry that is pleasing to the eye, like the petals of a deadly flower made of steel and iron. Inside the cockpit, the air is different. It is a small, intimate space, smelling of cured leather and the sharp tang of copper wiring. The instrument panel is a galaxy of dials and gauges, their faces glowing faintly with radium paint. The yoke, the control wheel, is smooth where hands have gripped it, worn down by the sweat and tension of 1,000 flights. This is not a lifeless cockpit. It is a sensory chamber where the pilot becomes part of the machine. The seat is not just a chair, it is the point of connection where the human spine meets the aluminum frame, fusing the two into a single entity capable of defying gravity. When the engines turn over, the silence of the hangar is shattered, but not by noise. It is shattered by a presence. The propellers kick into motion, becoming invisible blurs, slicing the air into ribbons. A low, guttural growl rises from the throat of the plane, deepening into a steady, rhythmic thrum. For her, this sound is not a disturbance. It is a sanctuary. As the plane climbs and levels off, the roar of the twin engines settles into a monotonous, constant drone. It is a wall of sound so thick, so absolute, that it effectively becomes a new kind of silence. It drowns out everything else. The chatter of the radio, the whistling of the wind, the thoughts of doubt that might creep into a quiet mind. They are all swallowed by the vibration. Close your eyes and feel the floorboards beneath your feet. The vibration travels up through the soles of the boots, a tingling sensation that moves into the ankles, the shins, the knees. It is a constant physical reminder of the power being expended to keep them aloft. It shakes the bones gently, loosening the tension in the muscles. The body adapts to it quickly. After an hour, you no longer hear the engines with your ears. You feel them in your chest cavity. Your heart begins to beat in sync with the revolutions of the propellers. This is the meditative state of long-distance flight. The world outside the windows moves so slowly it appears frozen, a painted backdrop of clouds and sky. Inside, the drone creates a hypnotic trance. Time loses its sharp edges. Minutes stretch into hours, and hours compress into moments. The mind detaches from the trivial worries of the earth below. There are no bills to pay here. There are no press conferences. There are no expectations other than the physics of flight. In this cocoon of noise, she finds profound peace. It is a solitude that is absolute. The vibration acts as a massage for the soul, shaking loose the debris of daily life until only the essential remains. The focus on the gauges, oil pressure, altitude, fuel mixture, becomes a mantra. Check the needle, adjust the mixture, check the compass, check the needle. It is a ritual performed in the temple of the sky, accompanied by the Gregorian chant of the wasp engines, singing their song of combustion and fire. Then comes the moment of transition. The coastline of Brazil, a ragged hem of green and brown where the jungle meets the sand, begins to slide backward beneath the wing. For hours there has been the comfort of the land, the reassuring sight of rivers winding like snakes, of forests that look like moss, of tiny clusters of civilization. The land is solid. It is safe. It is a place where, if gravity were to win, one might find a patch of earth to rest upon. But then, the green gives way to white. The surf crashing against the rocks is the last boundary. Beyond it lies the Atlantic. The transition is stark. One moment there is texture and variety below. Next, there is only the abyss. The ocean stretches out to the horizon, a flat, indifferent sheet of steel grey blue. It is vast beyond comprehension. From this height, the waves are invisible, smoothed out by distance into a deceptive calm. But she knows the truth. She knows that down there the water is heaving and churning, a chaotic wilderness that cares nothing for the fragile silver bird passing overhead. Crossing the threshold from land to water feels like stepping off a cliff. The psychological weight of the cockpit changes. The safety net is gone. There are no landmarks here, no rivers to follow, no railway lines to guide the eye. There is only the sun by day and the stars by night, and the trembling needle of the compass. She looks down, and for the first time a shiver that has nothing to do with the cold runs down her spine. The water is a mirror reflecting the sky, creating a sphere of blue in which they are suspended. The plane feels suddenly smaller. The Electra, which felt like a fortress on the runway, now seems like a toy, a speck of dust floating in a void. The loneliness is total. The smell of the land, the dust, the vegetation fades from the cabin air, replaced by a cleaner, sterile scent. It is the smell of high altitude and ozone, untainted by soil. The horizon becomes a blur where the ocean meets the sky, a seamless weld of two infinities. To look at it for too long is to feel a sense of vertigo, a fear of falling into that deep liquid blue. Yet, within that fear, there is a strange, wild exhilaration. This is the edge of the map. This is where the known world ends and the story begins. The engine drone continues, steady and reassuring, a tether to life in a place where humans were never meant to be. She tightens her grip on the yoke, feeling the vibrations in her fingertips, and turns her eyes forward, away from the vanishing land, into the heart of the empty open sky. The first 4 hours of the crossing are a study in deception. The mind of a pilot, suspended over the infinite monotony of the Atlantic, begins to rebel against the emptiness. It craves the solid, the known, the fixed. And so the sky begins to build false worlds to satisfy that hunger. To the left, just above the horizon, a shape emerges from the haze. It is dark, jagged, and substantial. The eye, strained by the glare of the sun reflecting off the water, latches onto it with a desperate hope. It looks like an island. You can see the dark green of the tree line, the sloping grey of the cliffs, perhaps even the white line of surf breaking against a rocky shore. The heart leaps just for a fraction of a second. It is a biological instinct older than language, the urge to find solid ground. But as the silver wings slice through the air, drawing closer, the island begins to dismantle itself. The cliffs soften at the edges, the trees lose their definition and blur into a nebulous grey. The solid mass pulls apart, revealing itself to be nothing more than a trick of moisture and light. It is a cumulus tower, a cathedral of water vapour rising from the warm ocean, casting a long, dark shadow on the waves below. It is the shadow that tricks the eye, creating the illusion of depth and solidity where there is only air. She watches this phantom land dissolve into wisps of white mist as the plane roars through the space where the mountain should have been. There is a strange, hollow feeling in the stomach when the illusion breaks. It is a reminder of isolation. The brain tries again. A bank of low clouds on the right becomes a distant coastline. A peculiar ripple in the water becomes a ship. She learns to distrust her own senses. She forces her eyes back to the instrument panel, to the cold, unfeeling truth of the gyroscope and the compass. They do not dream. They do not hallucinate islands in the sky. They only know the magnetic north and the artificial horizon. Yet, every time she looks up, the clouds are there, shifting, reforming, mocking the desire for home. They are beautiful, sculpted by the wind into shapes of lions, of castles, of sleeping giants, but they are ghosts. There is nothing out there but the wind, the water, and the fragile vibration of the aluminum shell that holds her. The cold at this altitude is insidious. It does not attack all at once, but seeps into the cockpit like a slow tide. It finds the gaps in the leather flight suit. It creeps into the boots, numbing the toes. It settles into the metal of the yoke, making the controls bite at the fingers. To combat this creeping frost, there is a small, cherished ritual. It is a domestic act performed in a hostile environment, a tether to the world of kitchens and firesides left far behind. She reaches down into the cramped space beside the seat, and her gloved fingers close around the smooth, cylindrical shape of a thermos. It is an old flask, its steel body scratched and dented from years of travel. It feels heavy, a dense weight of warmth in the freezing cabin. She holds it for a moment, letting the heat radiate through the leather of her gloves, warming her palms. The vibration of the engine travels through the metal of the flask, buzzing against her hand. Unscrewing the cap requires a specific dexterity. She must keep one hand on the yoke, correcting the drift of the plane, while the other twists the cup. The sound is small, a faint metallic scrape, but in the cockpit it is distinct. Then comes the stopper. When she pulls it free, a plume of steam escapes, instantly swirling and vanishing in the dry, cold air. The smell hits her before the taste. It is the rich, dark scent of cocoa. It smells of melted chocolate, of dairy, of sugar. It is a scent that has no business being here, 2,000 feet above the middle of the ocean. It belongs in a parlor with velvet curtains. It belongs to childhood. She pours the dark liquid into the cup. The plane bumps on a pocket of air, and the liquid sloshes dangerously near the rim, but she does not spill a drop. She lifts the cup to her lips. The steam warms her face, thawing the skin of her cheeks. The first sip is scalding, a shock of heat that travels down the throat and settles in the chest, a glowing coal of comfort. It is sweet and thick. For a moment, the metallic taste of the recycled air and the smell of gasoline are washed away. There is a profound intimacy in this act, drinking hot chocolate while suspended in the void. It is a defiant assertion of humanity. It says that even here in the cold and the noise and the danger, there is room for pleasure. There is room for warmth. She holds the liquid in her mouth for a moment, savoring the texture before swallowing. The sugar hits her blood, sharpening her focus, waking the tired parts of her brain. She screws the cap back on, the ritual complete, and places the flask back in its holder. The warmth lingers in her chest, a small internal fire to match the combustion in the engines outside. The taste of the sweet cocoa triggers a memory. It is a memory of earth, of dust, and of silence. It pulls her back to the year 1928. She was younger then, hungrier, perhaps a little more reckless. She was not flying a silver, Machine of war and distance, but a small canvas-skinned biplane that rattled like a bag of bolts. She remembers the day clearly. It was a day of hubris. She had pushed the fuel too far, trusting in luck rather than mathematics. The engine of that old plane did not have the deep, confident roar of the Electra. It coughed, it sputtered, and then, over a patchwork of fields in the American Midwest, it simply stopped. The silence that followed was the loudest sound she had ever heard. The wind whistled through the guide wires, a mournful, high-pitched song. The propeller, usually a blur of motion, slowed down, sweeping past the nose in lazy, distinct strokes until it froze into a dead stick of wood. She remembers the ground rushing up, not the abstract blue of the ocean, but the textured, detailed reality of a cornfield. She saw the individual rows of crops. She saw the brown of the dirt. She wrestled the stick, the plane heavy and sluggish without power, gliding like a falling leaf. The impact was not a crash, but a series of violent shudders. The wheels tore through the tall green stalks. The sound was a chaotic thrashing, like running through dry leaves, amplified 1,000 times. Cornstalks whipped against the fuselage, snapping and breaking, raining debris into the open cockpit. The smell of crushed vegetation, raw, green, and sap-like, filled the air instantly. When the plane finally shuddered to a halt, tilted at a crazy angle with one wing buried in the dirt, the stillness returned. She sat there for a long time, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She was alive. The plane was bent but whole. A farmer had walked out to her, slowly, chewing on a piece of straw. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at the girl in the leather helmet, then at his ruined corn, then at the silent machine. He offered her a hand down. The humility of that moment burned hotter than the crash. The realization that she was small, that the machine was fallible, and that gravity was a law that could not be negotiated with. That memory rides with her now. It sits in the cockpit seat beside her. It is the ghost of the cornfield. It reminds her that the ocean below is not forgiving. You cannot land on water and walk away with a bruised ego and a handful of corn silk. The ocean does not offer a hand down. It offers only depth. The risk she takes now is calculated, measured, and immense. She respects the engines not because they are powerful, but because she knows what the world sounds like when they stop. The memory serves as a ballast, keeping her grounded, even as she climbs higher into the thinning air. Behind the pilot, in the dim, vibrating cavity of the fuselage, there sits a presence. He is not merely a passenger. He is the anchor. If she is the wings of the Electra, he is its memory and its direction. His name is Fred Noonan, but here in the high, thin air, names matter less than weight and intent. He is a tall man, angular and composed. His frame is folded into the navigator's station, a small island of logic amidst the roar of the engines. There is a specific stillness about him that contrasts with the violent propulsion of the plane. It is the stillness of a man who has spent a lifetime watching the slow, deliberate turning of the world. He was a sea captain once. He learned the language of the stars on the rolling decks of merchant ships, surrounded by the salt spray and the infinite patience of the ocean. Later, he charted the great flying boat routes across the Pacific for Pan American, taming the vast distances with nothing but mathematics and intuition. Now, he sits in the semi-darkness. The light from his small work lamp creates a pool of warm yellow on the table, illuminating his hands. They are large hands with long fingers that move with the precision of a watchmaker. The skin is weathered, mapped with the lines of exposure to wind and sun. He does not fidget. He does not tap his foot. He exudes a calm that radiates forward to the cockpit. It is a heavy, grounding quiet. The air around him smells different than the air in the cockpit. While the cockpit smells of ozone and adrenaline, the navigator's station smells of dry paper, of graphite, and the faint, nostalgic scent of tobacco that clings to his heavy wool jacket. He is a competent shadow. He does not seek the glory of the landing or the flash of the camera bulbs. He is content to be the mind in the background, the one who knows where they are when the rest of the world has vanished. He is the keeper of the path. When the turbulence hits and the plane shudders like a stricken animal, he merely places a hand on the map to steady it, his expression unchanging. He has seen worse storms. He has navigated darker waters. The art of celestial navigation is a silent hymn to geometry. It is the act of tying a moving object to the fixed points of the universe. In the modern era of radio beams and radar, it seems almost archaic, a ritual of priests rather than pilots. But out here, where the radio signals fade into static, it is the only truth that remains. He rises from his seat, moving carefully in the swaying cabin. He holds the bubble octant in his hands. It is a heavy, precise instrument of black metal and glass, cold to the touch. He steps to the window, or perhaps opens the hatch if the altitude permits, and looks up. The wind howls outside, a physical force that tries to tear the instrument from his grip, but he holds it steady. He brings the eyepiece to his face. The world narrows. He is looking for a star. Arcturus, Betelgeuse, Polaris, tiny burning pinpricks of light that have guided sailors for 10,000 years. He must align the star with the bubble in the spirit level of the octant. It requires a steadiness of hand that borders on the supernatural. The plane is vibrating, the air is turbulent, the star is moving. Yet he freezes time. He waits for the perfect alignment, the moment when the celestial body kisses the horizon of the bubble. Click. He marks the time. He sits back down at his table. Now begins the sound of the pencil. It is a dry, scratching sound, distinct even over the drone of the engines. Scritch, scratch. He draws lines on the chart. These are lines of position. Where they intersect, there is the plane. It is a miracle of triangulation. He is drawing a triangle where one point is a star billions of miles away. One point is the center of the earth, and the third point is two fragile human beings suspended in a metal tube. The map itself is a masterpiece of texture. It is thick paper, creased from folding, warm under the lamp. His pencil is sharp. He calculates drift. He calculates speed. He accounts for the rotation of the earth. He works the slide rule, the plastic slide whispering against the frame. There is no room for error here. A mistake of 1 degree is a mistake of 60 miles. A mistake of 60 miles means missing the island. It means vanishing into the blue. But he does not make mistakes. He works with a fluid, rhythmic grace, turning the chaos of the wind and the stars into a single, clean pencil dot on the paper ocean. "We are here," the dot says, and for a moment, the universe makes sense. Communication in the Electra is not a matter of spoken words. The roar of the twin Wasp engines is a jealous god. It consumes all other sounds. To speak would require shouting until the throat was raw, and even then, the words would be shredded by the noise. So, they have developed a language of silence, a language of gesture and trust. Between the cockpit and the rear cabin runs the fuselage, filled with fuel tanks. To pass a message, they use a long bamboo pole with a clip attached to the end. It is a primitive telegraph. Noonan writes a course correction on a scrap of paper. The paper is small, perhaps torn from a notebook. The handwriting is blocky and clear. Course 7-5, wind shifting east. He clips it to the pole and slides it forward. She feels the nudge of the pole against her shoulder, or sees the movement in her peripheral vision. She takes the note. She reads it. She does not question it. She adjusts the heading indicator. She turns the plane. This action relies on a terrifying amount of trust. She cannot see the stars from the pilot's seat. She cannot see the math he has done. She only sees the slip of paper. But she turns the wheel. It is a surrender of control that speaks to a bond deeper than friendship. It is the bond of two people holding the same lifeline. Sometimes she turns her head to look back through the narrow opening. He looks up from his maps. Their eyes meet in the gloom. It is a brief connection. He gives a single slow nod. It is a microscopic gesture. It says, "We are on course." It says the fuel is sufficient. It says I am still here. She nods back. I understand. There is no need for reassurance or bravado. They are past that. In the vibration of the floorboards, in the shared smell of the fuel and the coffee, in the unified will to keep the machine flying, They have become a single organism. The pilot and the navigator, the hands and the eyes, the noise of the engines creates a wall around them, isolating them from the rest of the human race. But inside that wall, the silence between them is not empty. It is heavy with understanding. It is a silence that says they are in this together, all the way to the end of the line. Whatever that end may be, the bamboo pole slides back. The note is crumpled and stowed. The plane flies on, guided by a scratch of graphite and a nod in the dark. There is a precise moment when the night surrenders. It does not happen all at once, but in a slow, deliberate bleeding of color that changes the chemistry of the air. Over the vast, indifferent expanse of the Pacific, far from the interference of dust or city smoke, the dawn is not a weather event. It is a celestial performance. The cockpit has been a capsule of darkness for hours, illuminated only by the faint radium green glow of the instrument dials and the occasional spark from the exhaust stack. But now the horizon ahead begins to soften. A line of deep, bruised violet appears, separating the black water from the black sky. It widens, breathing upwards, turning into a shade of indigo so rich it feels like velvet against the eyes. Then the gold arrives. It is not the pale, timid yellow of a northern morning. This is the equator. The light here is thick, heavy and metallic. It spills over the rim of the world like molten bronze, catching the tops of the cloud layer below. The clouds are no longer grey vapours. They are transfigured into mountains of spun sugar, into dunes of amber and rose. The plane, the silver Electra, catches this fire. The propeller blades, previously invisible in the dark, now flash with every revolution, slicing the golden air into coins of light. Inside the cockpit, the sudden brightness is blinding. It reveals the dust motes dancing in the cabin air, turning them into microscopic stars. It warms the aluminum skin of the fuselage, and she can feel that heat radiating through the wall, warming her left shoulder. At this zenith, suspended between the burning sun and the cooling ocean, a profound silence descends. It is a paradox, for the engines are still roaring, consuming fuel and air with violent hunger. But the mind, overwhelmed by the visual majesty, filters out the sound. The roar recedes into the background, becoming a texture rather than a noise. It becomes the hum of the universe itself. In this golden hour there is no fear, there is no fatigue. There is only the sensation of floating in a bowl of light. She feels weightless, as if the plane is not flying by lift and thrust, but is being held aloft by the sheer density of the colour surrounding it. It is a moment of pure, unadulterated grace, where the human spirit expands to fill the space between the horizons. She reaches into the side pocket of her flight suit, the leather creaking softly with the movement. Her fingers find the small, battered logbook. It is a modest object to hold such vast distances. The cover is worn at the corners, stained with oil and the sweat of nervous palms. She opens it, smoothing the page against her knee. The paper is thin, crisp, and smells faintly of dry wood pulp. She takes her pencil. It is a simple tool, wood and graphite, but it is the needle with which she stitches her life to the page. The vibration of the plane makes writing a physical challenge. The tip of the pencil dances on the paper. She has to lock her wrist, pressing down hard to leave a mark. The resulting script is jagged, urgent, a seismograph of the flight. She writes the coordinates. The numbers are the skeleton of the journey. Latitude, longitude, speed, fuel consumed. But then she pauses. The numbers are not enough. They cannot capture the texture of the clouds or the specific loneliness of the waves. She looks out the window again, studying the water below. How to describe it? It is not merely blue. It is the color of a peacock's neck. It is the color of a bruised plum. She writes, water shadows like dark ink. She writes, clouds like curds of cream in a blue bowl. She tries to capture the light. Sunlight splinters on the waves. The act of writing is grounding. It forces the mind to slow down, to observe, to translate the raw sensory input into language. She notes the way the shadow of the plane races across the cloud tops below, a tiny, dark cross chasing them, always present, always just out of reach. She notes the temperature of the cabin, how the sun has turned it into a greenhouse, the sweat now gathering at her hairline, trickling down the back of her neck. These notes are whispered secrets to a future self, or perhaps to a world that will never see this view. She presses harder on the paper, the graphite snapping slightly, leaving a smudge of grey dust. She blows it away. The page is a chaotic mix of mathematics and poetry. 1,500 feet, scattered cumulus. The sky is a washed-out denim. She closes the book. The snap of the cover is lost in the engine noise, but she feels the finality of it in her hands. She slides it back into the pocket, close to her hip, a testament to the fact that she was here, that she saw the gold, and that she remembered to write it down. The confinement of the cockpit can become a physical weight. The body screams for extension, for air, for space. The cramped seat, the pedals, the yoke. It is a cage of function. In the quiet monotony of the cruise, her mind drifts back to a time when the cage was open. A memory of an older plane, a different ocean, and a moment of terrifying necessity. It was the friendship flight. The fuel gauge on the wing tank had failed, or perhaps a cap was loose. The details are blurred by time, but the sensation is etched into her nerves. She remembers unbuckling the harness. The loss of that tight embrace was the first shock. Then the opening of the hatch. The wind did not enter, it exploded. It was a solid wall of air, screaming at 100 miles an hour, smelling of salt and exhaust. It hit her face like a physical blow, stripping the breath from her lungs. She had to force her body out into that slipstream. She remembers the feeling of the fuselage under her boots. It was slick with oil and mist. There were no railings. There was only the curve of the canvas and wood, and the handhold she could find. She crawled. It was not a walk. It was a primal scramble. Her fingers clawed at the edges of the cockpit, then at the struts. The metal was freezing cold, biting into her skin. She moved out onto the wing. Below her boot soles there was nothing, just a few inches of structure, and then thousands of feet of empty air dropping down to the churning grey water. The vertigo was a physical nausea, a spinning of the inner ear. But she did not look down. She looked at the rivets. She looked at the fuel cap. The wind tore at her clothes, flapping the heavy fabric until it sounded like gunfire. It tried to peel her fingers from the strut. Every muscle in her body was locked in a spasm of tension. She reached the tank. She checked the cap. She tightened it. The metal was greasy, slippery. The return journey was worse. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a cold, shaking fear. Backing into the cockpit felt like retreating into a womb. When she finally dropped back into the seat and pulled the hatch closed, the silence, relative as it was, felt like a miracle. The air was still. The smell of the wind was replaced by the smell of leather and sweat. That memory lives in her fingertips now as she grips the yoke of the Electra. The Electra is enclosed, modern and safe. She does not need to walk the wing here, but she knows the wing is there. She knows the violence of the air that rushes just inches from her elbow, separated only by a thin sheet of glass and metal. She respects the barrier. She knows that outside this small, warm bubble of coffee and maps, the sky is a hostile, screaming place that wants to pull her down. And she knows that she has the courage to go out there if she ever has to again. But for now, she stays in the warmth, watching the golden light play on the silver wing, grateful for the glass that keeps the wind at bay. Far below the golden solitude of the clouds, anchored in the heaving blue reality of the Pacific, lies a speck of white-painted steel. It is the Coast Guard cutter Itasca. To the albatross gliding overhead, it is nothing more than a piece of driftwood, bobbing aimlessly in the center of nowhere. But inside it is a hive of anxious heat and human electricity. Imagine the temperature of steel baking under an equatorial sun. The decks of the Itasca are hot enough to scorch bare feet. The air is heavy with moisture, a wet blanket that clings to the skin of every sailor on board. It smells of bunker oil, of salt spray drying on hot metal, and of the thick, cloying smoke drifting from the ship's own funnel. There is no wind here to speak of, only the rolling swell of the ocean that lifts the ship and drops it, over and over in a nauseating rhythmic cradle. The men on board are not merely waiting, they are straining. They are the designated guardians of a miracle that has not yet arrived. For days they have been preparing. They have stoked the boilers to generate steam, not for propulsion, but to create a column of black smoke. It is a primitive signal, a dark finger pointing upwards, begging to be seen against the blinding glare of the sky. Down in the mess hall, coffee cups slide gently across the tables with the roll of the ship. The coffee is lukewarm and bitter, tasting of the metal urn, but the men drink it anyway to keep their hands busy. There is a tension in the shoulders of the captain, Commander Thompson. He paces the bridge, his shoes clicking on the deck plates. He scans the horizon through binoculars that feel heavy and slick with sweat in his hands. He is looking for a glint of silver. He is looking for a mosquito in a cathedral. Every man on the ship knows the stakes. They are the only lifeline in a radius of thousands of miles. If the plane misses them, there is only the open ocean, a wilderness of water that stretches all the way to Antarctica. The responsibility hangs in the air like the humidity. It is a physical weight. The boiler stokers, deep in the belly of the ship, shovel coal with a frantic rhythm, their faces streaked with soot and sweat, feeding the fire to make the smoke darker, thicker, higher. Look at us, the ship screams in silence. We are here. We are the ground. The heart of the Itasca is not the engine room, it is the radio shack. This is a small, cramped compartment, walled in by banks of grey metal transmitters and receivers. The air here is hotter than anywhere else on the ship, warmed by the glowing vacuum tubes and the feverish body heat of the operators. It smells of ozone, of heated dust, and of the sharp, acidic tang of nervous perspiration. The chief radio man sits hunched over his desk. He wears heavy Bakelite headphones that clamp tight against his ears, shutting out the sounds of the ocean and the ship. For hours, his world has been reduced to a landscape of sound. He lives in the static. Close your eyes and listen to what he hears. It is not silence. The radio spectrum is a chaotic ocean of its own. It is the crackle of atmospheric discharge, sounding like dry leaves being crushed in a fist. It is the high-pitched whine of interference, a needle of sound drilling into the skull. It is the low, rhythmic thrum of the carrier wave, a heartbeat without a pulse. He tunes the dial. The knob is large, black and ridged. He turns it with infinitesimal slowness. The friction of the mechanism is smooth, oiled, perfect. He is hunting for a frequency. 3105 kilocycles. It is a specific address in the ether. He presses, the headphones deeper into his skull, closing his eyes, trying to filter the chaos into order. And then it comes. A voice. But it is not a clear voice. It is a ghost, shredded by the distance and the curvature of the earth. Calling Itasca, We must be on you, but cannot see you. The voice is thin. It sounds metallic and breathless, as if it is being spoken through a long tin pipe. It wavers, fading in and out of the static, like a swimmer struggling in rough surf. The radio man's heart stutters. He reaches for his key. The telegraph key is a simple lever of brass and wood, polished by the touch of 1,000 fingers. He taps it. Dit-da-dit. He sends the signal back. He speaks into the microphone, his voice calm, professional, masking the rising panic. Itasca to... What is your position? But the radio is a cruel mistress. She can hear, but she cannot hear him. The frustration in the small room is palpable. It tastes like copper. They can hear her fear. They can hear the exhaustion in the vowels, the way the sentences are clipped and urgent. Gas is running low, but she cannot hear their replies. The invisible thread that connects them is frayed. It is a one-way mirror. They are shouting into the void, and the void is only echoing back her desperate calls. The radio man slams his hand on the desk, a rare break in discipline. The static hisses back, indifferent, a wall of white noise that swallows the pleas of the living. Step back from the sweating men and the rolling ship. Consider for a moment the sheer audacity of what they are attempting. For most of human history, communication was limited by the strength of the lungs. You could only speak as far as you could shout. If a ship sailed over the horizon, it was gone. It fell off the edge of the known world, entering a silence that lasted for months or years. But here in the 20th century, humanity has woven a new layer over the planet. It is a web of invisible lightning. We have built towers of steel lattice that scrape the clouds. We have blown glass bulbs and filled them with tungsten filaments that glow with the captured energy of thunderstorms. We have learned to modulate the air itself. Inside the radio equipment of the Itasca, a miracle is happening. Vacuum tubes, warm and fragile as eggs, are channeling streams of electrons. They are amplifying the whisper of a human voice, boosting it, transforming it into electromagnetic waves that ripple out at the speed of light. It is a kind of magic that we have mistaken for engineering. The desire behind this technology is the oldest human hunger. It is the refusal to be alone. It is the desperate need to say, "I am here," and to hear someone say, "I hear you," in return. We have strung copper wires across the ocean floors. We have filled the air with invisible signals. We have tried to banish the silence of the distance. But on this morning, July 2nd, 1937, the technology is failing. The web is tearing. The dream of connection is colliding with the reality of physics. The frequencies are incompatible. The antennas are shadowed. The miracle is dissolving back into nature. The radio operator looks at the glowing orange filaments of the tubes. They look like the embers of a dying fire. He thinks about the woman in the silver plane, thousands of feet above the water. She is surrounded by the most advanced technology of her age, yet she is as isolated as a sailor on a raft. The radio, which promised to shrink the world, has only served to measure the vastness of the silence. It amplifies loneliness. It allows the men on the ship to witness the tragedy, to hear the fading heartbeat without the power to intervene. It is the ultimate torture of the modern age, to be connected enough to hear the end, but too distant to stop it. The static rises again, a tide of white noise washing over the frequency, burying the human voice in the indifference of the cosmos. The golden hour does not last. It is a fleeting promise that the sky makes to the earth, and by the 10th hour of the flight, that promise is broken. The world outside the cockpit glass undergoes a slow, suffocating transformation. The infinite blue, which had offered such clarity, begins to thicken. It coagulates. A haze rises from the water, blurring the sharp line of the horizon until the sea and the sky become one indivisible wall of grey. It begins as a glare, a brightness that hurts the eyes even behind tinted goggles. Then the clouds descend. They are not the friendly scattered puffs of the morning. They are low, flat strata, heavy with moisture, pressing down like a ceiling in a cellar. The light inside the cockpit changes from the warm bronze of the sunrise to a flat, clinical white. It is a shadowless light that reveals every scratch on the instrument panel, every line of fatigue on a face, and with the grey comes the static. It starts as a low hiss in the headphones, like the sound of sand pouring onto a metal sheet. But as the hours drag on, it grows. It becomes a physical presence in the cabin, a third passenger made of electricity and chaos. She presses the headset tighter against her ears, the leather cups damp with sweat. She is listening for a rhythm, for the Morse code, for the voice of Itasca. But the atmosphere is hostile. The air is charged with the friction of the weather. Every time the plane passes through a wisp of cloud, the radio screams. It is a tearing sound, sharp and violent, like fabric ripping right next to the eardrum. It makes her wince, it makes her teeth ache. She adjusts the dial, her fingers trembling slightly from the vibration of the yoke. She moves the frequency a fraction of an inch to the left, then to the right. Nothing. Only the roar of the sun's radiation hitting the atmosphere. The frustration is not a hot anger. It is a cold, creeping stone in the stomach. She can see Fred Noonan in the reflection of the glass. He is hunched over, his hands pressed to his own headset, his eyes closed in deep concentration. He is trying to filter the white noise, to find the needle of sound in the haystack of interference. But the silence from the world below is deafening. It is a heavy blanket muffling them, wrapping the silver plane in a cocoon of isolation. The radio, which should be their lifeline, has become a tormentor, whispering nothing but the chaotic, meaningless language of the storm. There is a specific tyranny to a fuel gauge. It is a simple instrument, a glass face with a painted needle and a few white marks. Yet, in the 12th and 13th hours, it becomes the most important object in the universe. It is the hourglass of their lives. She watches the needle. It does not move perceptibly at the moment. It is too slow for that. But every time she looks away to scan the horizon and looks back, it has shifted. It creeps relentlessly to the left, toward the empty mark. The sensation of the plane changes as the tanks drain. A fully fueled aircraft is heavy. It plows through the air with a certain stubborn momentum. It feels anchored. But as the fuel burns away, turning into heat and exhaust, the Electra becomes light. It feels buoyant, almost fragile, like a dried leaf caught in an updraft. It responds too quickly to the turbulence. The wind tosses it with less effort. This physical lightness is terrifying. It is the feeling of substance fading away. There is a smell that accompanies this realization. It is the smell of the engines running hot and lean. The rich, heavy scent of the morning's fuel load is gone, replaced by a sharper, more metallic odor of heated aluminum and the faint, acrid tang of hot oil. She does not panic. Panic is a waste of oxygen. Instead, a profound acceptance settles over the cockpit. It is a quiet, meditative state. She calculates the time remaining, not in hours, but in gallons. Every minute is a cup of liquid. Every mile is a pint. She creates a mental equation of survival. If she leans the mixture, she gains 3 minutes. If she reduces the RPM, she gains 5. She listens to the engines with a paranoia born of necessity. The Pratt and Whitney wasps have been singing the same note for hours, a steady thundering drone. But in the silence of her own mind, she begins to hear phantoms, a skip in the beat, a hesitation. Is that cylinder number 3 misfiring? No, it is just the wind. She runs her tongue over her lips. They are dry, tasting of salt and stale coffee. She swallows, but her throat is tight. The thirst is there, but she ignores it. The plane is thirsty, and that is the only thirst that matters. The needle touches the red line. It is a quiet kiss, the beginning of the end of the fuel. The engines hum on, oblivious, consuming the last dregs of the liquid time they carried from New Guinea. The final act is not one of screaming. It is one of professional courtesy. It is hour 20. The sun is high and cruel, washing the ocean in a blinding glare that hides everything. The shadows of the clouds look like islands. The islands look like shadows. The world is a hall of mirrors. She reaches for the microphone. The Bakelite plastic is warm, slick with the oils of her hand. She presses the button. The mechanical click is a tiny, distinct sound in the roar of the cabin. Her voice, when she speaks, is unrecognizable to those who know her from the newsreels. It is not the bright, chirpy voice of the heroine pilot. It is a voice stripped of all artifice. It is low, cracked with fatigue and dry as dust. We are on the line 157337. She speaks the numbers slowly. 157. She enunciates them with the care of a schoolteacher, trying to force the meaning through the wall of static. There is no tremor of fear. There is no weeping. It is a report. It is a statement of fact. We will repeat message. She pauses to breathe. The air in the cockpit is thin and stale. It hurts to inhale. She looks out at the endless rolling blue. There is no land. There is no ship. There is only the vast, indifferent indifference of the Pacific. We are running north and south. This is the message of a professional. She is telling them she is flying a search pattern. She is doing the work until the propeller stops turning. She is flying the line, north and south, up and down the invisible grid Noonan has drawn on his map. She releases the button. The click echoes again. She waits. She presses the headset to her ear until it hurts. She wants to hear a voice, a man from the Coast Guard, a crackle of acknowledgement. We hear you. Turn left. But there is only the whisper, the hiss, the pop. The static rushes back into the silence she created, filling the space where a human connection should be. She looks at Noonan. He does not look up. He is staring at the chronometer, the watch face ticking away the final seconds of their endurance. She places the microphone back in its cradle. Her hand lingers on it for a moment, a final touch of the link to the living world. Then she puts both hands back on the yoke. The vibration travels up her arms, shaking her shoulders. She is tired. She is so very tired. But she holds the line. She flies north. She flies south. The engines roar their defiance against the silence, a loud burning rage against the dying of the light until the very last drop is gone. And then there is only the wind. There is a terrifying abstraction to the concept of a line of position. It is a mathematical ideal, a geometric perfection drawn on a chart with a sharp pencil and a steady hand. On paper, it is a clear, dark mark. It is a promise that says you are somewhere on this path. But out here, in the physical reality of the Pacific, the line is invisible. It is a ghost. Imagine the sensory overload of the cockpit at this specific moment. The sun is no longer a golden companion. It is a hammer. It hangs high in the zenith, a blinding white disk that bleaches the color out of the world. It reflects off the water with a ferocity that sears the retina. To look outside is to look into a mirror reflecting a blast furnace. She squints behind her goggles, the skin around her eyes crinkling, white lines appearing in the layer of oil and grime on her face. They know, with the certainty of religious faith and the precision of science, that they are on the line. 1 57, 337. These numbers are burned into their minds. They are chanting them like a prayer. The calculations say they must be here. The sun line says they must be here. They are flying the hypotenuse of a triangle that spans the globe. But the ocean refuses to cooperate with the math. Below them, the water is a mesmerizing, repetitive pattern of swells. There are no signposts. There are no milestones. There is only the texture of the waves, moving in a slow, hypnotic rhythm that confuses the inner ear. The tension in the cockpit is a tangible thing, heavier than the fuel, heavier than the engine blocks. It is the tension of being right on top of it, yet seeing nothing. It is the feeling of searching for a lost ring in deep grass, knowing it is within reach of your hand, yet your fingers grasp only air. She flies north. She banks the plane, the wings dipping toward the water, turning around. She flies south. She is tracing the invisible line over and over, weaving a thread through the air, hoping to snag the island. The engines drone on, a monotonous chorus of combustion that mocks their stillness. They are moving at 150 miles an hour, yet they seem to be suspended in amber, trapped in a paradox of high speed and zero progress. The air in the cabin is hot, stagnant, and smells of dry fear. The metallic taste of adrenaline that has nowhere to go. And what is it they are searching for? Do not imagine a tropical paradise. Do not imagine swaying palms and high green peaks that catch the clouds. Howland Island is not a destination designed for human comfort. It is a geological afterthought. Picture a flat, desolate scab on the surface of the ocean. It is barely a mile and a half long, a splinter of ancient coral that has managed to claw its way just a few feet above the tide line. From the altitude of the Electra, it would not look like land. It would look like a slightly different shade of water. It is a pancake of sand and scrub brush, so low that the waves in a storm can wash almost completely over it. The sensory reality of the island is harsh and primitive. It smells of guano. For thousands of years, this rock has been nothing more than a rest stop for seabirds. The air is thick with the ammonia scent of their droppings, baking in the equatorial heat. The ground is not soft earth. It is sharp, crunching coral and sand that radiates heat like a skillet. There are no trees to cast a shadow. The sun beats down on the white sand, creating a shimmer of heat haze that distorts the air above it. This thermal cloak makes the island even harder to see. It camouflages itself against the horizon, hiding behind the veil of rising heat. The soundscape of the island is a lonely roar. It is the sound of the Pacific crashing against the fringing reef, a ceaseless, violent grinding of water against stone. The birds scream over the surf. Frigates, boobies, terns, swirling in the updrafts. They are the only masters of this domain. To find this speck in the middle of 64 million square miles of water is an act of supreme navigational arrogance. It is like trying to find a specific grain of rice on a white floor from the ceiling of a cathedral. It sits there, indifferent to the plane circling above. It does not want to be found. It is a silent, calcified tombstone waiting in the blue, offering a runway of hard-packed coral that is barely visible until you are directly upon it. If they are 5 miles to the east or 5 miles to the west, they will miss it. The curvature of the earth hides it. The glare hides it. The ocean, jealous of its secrets, wraps the tiny island in a cloak of light and water, making it a ghost even to those who are looking right at it. While the silver plane traces its frantic lines in the sky, a different kind of drama plays out across the curve of the world. It is the drama of heavy steel and slow decisions. The American machine of rescue and support is waking up, but it is a giant that moves with agonizing slowness. Far away in cool wood-paneled offices in Washington and Honolulu, men in uniforms are looking at maps. The air here smells of floor wax and old paper, safe and stale. Telephones ring, heavy, black Bakelite devices with rotary dials that click softly as they return to position. The conversations are filled with the friction of bureaucracy, protocols, clearances, the chain of command. There is a profound disconnect between the speed of the Electra and the speed of the world trying to catch her. The plane is a creature of the air, moving at 3 miles a minute. The ships that are supposed to help her are creatures of the water, ploughing through the resistance of the waves at perhaps 20 knots. The battleship Colorado, the aircraft carrier Lexington. Their names sound powerful, invincible, but in the context of the vast Pacific, they are sluggish. It takes hours to build up steam in the boilers. It takes hours to muster a crew. It takes days to cross the distances that the plane covers in an afternoon. There is a tragedy of timing. The intent to help is there. The hearts of the sailors and the officers are with the flyer, but the mechanism of their aid is too heavy. They are trying to catch a hummingbird with a steam shovel, and then there is the misunderstanding, the confusion of frequencies. The radio operators on the ground and on the ships are tuning their dials, searching the static, but they are often listening to the wrong silence. They are waiting for a signal on a frequency she cannot transmit, or transmitting on a frequency she cannot hear. It is a failure of translation. The tragedy is not just in the empty tank or the missed island. It is in the gap between the desperate, immediate need of the pilot and the cumbersome, delayed reaction of the world below. While she is fighting for seconds, the world is measuring time in hours. While she is screaming for a landmark, the ships are still hull down over the horizon, pushing a wall of white water before them, their engines beating a slow, heavy rhythm that will arrive too late. The help is coming, but it is coming at the speed of a ship, while the disaster is unfolding at the speed of flight. The distance between them is not just miles, it is a chasm of time that cannot be bridged. The time is 8:43 in the morning, local time, or perhaps it is 19 hours into the endurance of the machine. Time has lost its linear quality. It has become a loop, a repetitive cycle of scanning the horizon and checking the fuel gauge. In the radio room of the Itasca, the air is thick with cigarette smoke and the smell of hot electronics. The operator is leaning forward, his posture rigid, pressing the headphones against his skull until the cartilage aches. He is waiting for a ghost, and then, through the wall of static, that relentless, frying sound of the atmosphere, her voice cuts through one last time. We running north and south. The words are not spoken with panic. Panic is a chaotic energy, and she has no energy left for chaos. They are spoken with a flat, hollow exhaustion. It is the voice of someone who has accepted the reality of the situation. The tone is stripped of the brightness that the newsreels loved. It is dry, brittle, and terribly human. Think about the physical reality of that sentence. Running north and south. It is a confession of blindness. They are flying back and forth along a line of position, a mathematical abstraction drawn on a paper chart. They are trapped on an invisible tightrope, unable to step off, walking the same path of air over and over again. To the north, the clouds stack up like mountains. To the south, the glare of the sun on the water creates a blinding mirror. The radio operator types the words. His fingers hit the keys of the typewriter with a staccato rhythm that sounds like gunfire in the quiet room. Itasca. We are running north and south. Then the static rises. It swells like a rogue wave washing over the frequency. It drowns out the hum of the cockpit. It drowns out the vibration of the engines. It swallows the voice. The operator waits. He calls back. He sends Morse code. He pleads into the microphone. But the ether is empty. The voice is gone. The sentence hangs in the air of the radio shack, a final, unfinished poem. It is the last thread connecting the silver plane to the world of men. And with a hiss of white noise, that thread snaps. There is a specific sound that every pilot dreads, and yet, in this moment, it brings a strange kind of clarity. It is the cough of an engine starving. The left engine goes first. It sputters, a break in the monotonous rhythm that has held them aloft for 20 hours. Then, a moment later, the right engine follows. The silence that descends is absolute. It is not a quiet silence. It is a heavy, physical weight. For the first time since they left New Guinea, the wind is the only sound. It whistles over the aluminum skin of the fuselage, a mournful, high-pitched song. The nose of the Electra dips. The propellers, once invisible blurs of power, slow down. They become distinct blades again, windmilling lazily in the slipstream, turning into useless pieces of metal. Now comes the glide. The plane is no longer a creature of the air. It is a falling object, but she flies it still. Her hands are firm on the yoke. She is not fighting the fall, she is guiding it. She watches the water rush up to meet them. It does not look like water from this angle. It looks like a hard, hammered shield of blue steel. The approach is fast. The ocean swells are large, rolling mountains of water. She must time it perfectly. She must land along the crest of a wave, not into the face of one. If she hits the face, the plane will shatter. If she hits the crest, they might skip. The impact is violent, but not final. The belly of the plane slams into the Pacific. The sound is a deafening roar of water against metal, a sledgehammer blow that shudders through the floorboards and into their spines. The water sprays up over the cockpit glass, a blinding sheet of white foam. The plane slews to the side, dragged by the drag of the waves. It settles. Then the motion stops. The violence ends. The silver bird is now a boat bobbing awkwardly in the trough of the swell. The cabin begins to cool immediately. The heat of the engines hisses as the seawater touches the hot metal casings. The smell of the ocean, raw, salty and fishy, rushes into the cabin, overpowering the smell of fuel. The water begins to enter. It seeps in through the seams, through the bottom hatch. It is cold. It rises around their ankles, soaking the leather of their boots. It is the ocean claiming back its own. The aluminum of the plane came from the earth, and now it returns to the depth. There is a sense of inevitability to it. The struggle against gravity is over. Gravity has won, as it always does in the end. In these final moments before the heavy engines drag the airframe down into the dark, there is a space for something other than fear. The world above is frantic. Ships are burning coal to reach them. Radios are screaming. Headlines are being written. The entire globe is convulsing with the question, where are they? But here in the small rocking cabin of the Electra, there is only peace. The race is over. The pressure to succeed, the pressure to be the hero, to be Lady Lindy, to smile for the cameras, to carry the weight of women's aviation. It all dissolves in the salt water. She looks at Noonan. He is bruised, perhaps, shaken, but he is there. The navigator who could not find the island has found the end of the journey. There is no blame in the look they share. There is only the recognition of a shared fate. She opens the overhead hatch. The air that rushes in is pure and clean. It does not smell of exhaust, it smells of thousands of miles of emptiness. She stands up, her head rising above the fuselage. The sky is vast, an indifferent dome of blue that stretches to eternity. The clouds that mocked them are now just beautiful sculptures of vapor. She feels the sun on her face. It is the same sun that rose over the equator, the same sun she chased around the world. It is warm. She closes her eyes. The rocking of the plane is gentle like a cradle. There is a profound quiet here. The noise of the 20th century, the engines, the radios, the crowds, is gone. She is just a woman standing on a sinking raft in the middle of the largest ocean on earth. She is small. She is insignificant. And in that insignificance she is free. The water rises higher. The wings disappear beneath the surface, shimmering green under the waves. The nose tilts down. It is time to go. She does not feel terror. She feels a deep, narcotic fatigue. The adrenaline has faded, leaving a softness in her limbs. She lets go of the world. She lets go of the name Amelia. She slips into the embrace of the Pacific, into the cool, dark silence that has been waiting for her since the moment she first looked up at the stars in her garden. The water closes over the silver skin of the plane. The ripples spread out, wide and slow, and then the ocean smooths itself out, leaving no mark, no scar, nothing but the perfect, unbroken blue of the empty horizon. The engine stops, the propeller freezes, the silver bird vanishes beneath the waves. But energy, as the physicists tell us, is never destroyed. It merely changes form. The kinetic energy of the Lockheed Electra, the burning ambition of its pilot, did not simply dissipate into the salt water. It seeped into the atmosphere. It became a vibration in the air, a frequency too low to hear with the ear, but loud enough to be felt in the marrow of the bone. In the years that followed, the silence she left behind was not empty. It was a pregnant silence filled with the scratching of pencils on graph paper and the turning of pages in quiet libraries. Imagine a young girl, years later, sitting on the floor of a dusty room. The air smells of old bookbinding glue and vanilla. She holds a book with a black and white photograph on the cover. A woman with short, tousled hair and eyes that look at the horizon. The girl runs her finger over the glossy paper. She feels a spark. It is not a loud explosion. It is a quiet, internal ignition. This is the legacy. It is not found in statues of bronze that stand cold in the rain. It is found in the sudden, sharp intake of breath, when a woman looks at a machine and thinks, I can master this. It is found in the smell of aviation fuel at a small county airport, where a student pilot climbs into a cockpit for the first time. The seat is worn. The controls are cold, but she feels a ghostly hand on her shoulder, a reassuring weight. Amelia became a texture in the fabric of history. She ceased to be a person of flesh and blood, susceptible to fatigue and gravity, and became an element. She became the wind that lifts the wing. She became the clarity of the North Star. In households across the world, the idea of her lingered like the scent of wood smoke in a sweater, faint, comforting, and undeniable. She made the impossible feel close. She took the ceiling of the sky, which had seemed so solid and heavy to half the human race, and she revealed it to be made of nothing but air and light waiting to be flown through. For the rest of the world, the ending was not a sharp cut to black. It was a slow fade. In 1937, the living rooms of America and the world were filled with a collective holding of breath. The radio cabinets, polished wood furniture that sat in the corners of parlors, became shrines. Families gathered around them, the warm yellow light of the dial casting long shadows on the rug. They listened to the static. They listened to the newsreaders, whose voices grew grave and then resigned. There was a refusal to believe the silence. The newspapers, with their bold ink and rough paper, printed maps with arrows and dotted lines. People traced them with their fingers. "She must be here," they whispered. "She is on an island. She is waiting." But as the weeks turned into months and the months into years, a strange transformation occurred. The panic of the search softened into the melancholy of the myth. The failure to find a wreck, to find a body, to find a piece of silver metal was not a tragedy. It was, in a strange way, a gift. Because she was never found, she never truly died. She was never lowered into the ground to the sound of weeping. She never grew old. She never sat in a rocking chair, her eyesight fading, her memories dimming. She remained forever young, forever in flight, forever suspended in that golden hour above the Pacific. The mystery became a locked room in the collective imagination. It is a quiet room, filled with theories and whispers. People handle the mystery like a precious stone, turning it over in their hands, looking for new facets. Did she survive? Was she captured? Did she live out her days as a castaway? The questions are spoken softly, not because they demand answers, but because asking them keeps her alive. The lack of an ending allows the story to loop eternally. She is always just about to land. She is always just checking the fuel. She is always just on the horizon. The world accepted the mystery because the truth, the cold, crushing truth of the water, was too heavy to bear. So they built a cathedral of uncertainty and placed her inside it, a saint of the sky who stepped out of time. Now, let the human voices fade, let the radios click off, let the newspapers yellow and crumble into dust. Return to the point of contact. Return to the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Here, the only clock is the tide. It rises and falls, a breathing chest of water, inhaling and exhaling twice a day. The silence is profound. It is not the silence of an empty room, but the silence of a cathedral that is 5 miles deep. The water at the surface is warm, heated by the equatorial sun. It is a brilliant crystalline blue, but as you descend, the light fails. The blue deepens to indigo, then to violet, and finally to a black so absolute it feels like velvet. Down here, the pressure is immense. It is a hug that would crush a submarine. Somewhere in this darkness, or perhaps scattered across the sharp coral of the reef shelf, lie the remains of the dream. The aluminum skin of the Electra, once polished to a mirror shine, is now part of the ocean floor. The salt is a patient worker. It corrodes. It dissolves. Slowly, molecule by molecule, the metal is returning to the earth. The engines, those heavy hearts of steel, are now homes for the creatures of the deep. A crab scuttles over a cylinder head. A strand of coral blooms from the control yoke. The wind blows over the surface, the same trade wind that pushed against her wings. It hisses over the white caps. It carries no memory. Nature is beautifully, terrifyingly indifferent. The waves do not know her name. The sun does not mourn her. The island of Howland sits flat and baking in the heat, a lonely sentinel that saw everything and says nothing. And yet, in the whisper of the foam on the reef, there is a sound. If you listen closely, past the cry of the terns and the crash of the surf, you can hear it. It is the sound of arrival. She did not reach the land, but she reached the ultimate destination. She became part of the blue. She became part of the distance. The ocean holds her close, wrapped in a blanket of currents and tide. The story ends where it began, in the quiet, in the vastness, in the beautiful, terrifying freedom of the open space. The pilot sleeps, the machine rests, and the water rolls on, covering the secret with 1,000,000 years of silence. And with that, we turn the last silent page. The flight is over. The heavy, leather-bound logbook is closed and rests now back in the deep, calming shadow of the shelf. The whispers are fading now. The story is done. There is nothing left to do but to close your eyes and let the soft, deep quiet of the library cradle your rest. You are safe right here if you wish to stay a while longer in this peaceful room to join our quiet company. I invite you to subscribe and return to the library tomorrow night. Sleep now, sleep well, sleep deeply. Good night.